I don't take money from desperate people. Beatrice Anderson's voice was steady, firm, final. She pushed $2,500 in cash back across her sewing table. The man in front of her, soaking wet, suit torn at the shoulder, hands shaking, stared at her like she'd lost her mind. Maybe she had. Her bank account showed $283.47. The electricity company's final shutoff notice sat on her desk. Her 14-year-old daughter needed shoes. But something in this stranger's terrified eyes reminded her of what her mother always said. When someone's drowning, you don't charge them for the rope. She had no idea that the man standing in her shop at 9:47 p.m. wasn't drowning. He was the ocean that had swallowed her family whole 26 years ago. And what she would discover in 4 months would destroy everything she thought she knew about kindness, justice, and the American dream. Comment where you're listening from. Subscribe to channel. Beatrice Anderson was 43 years old, and she'd been poor her entire life. Not the kind of poor that's temporary. Not the bootstraps kind. The kind that runs in your blood like a genetic disease, passed down from mother to daughter, generation after generation. No cure in sight. She'd grown up in 3rd Ward, Houston. Her mother, Emma Anderson, had run Anderson Alterations in the same brick building since 1984. Beatrice learned to sew at 7 years old. Not as a hobby, as survival training. By 9, she could take in a waistband. By 12, she could reconstruct a jacket shoulder. By 15, she could work by candlelight during blackouts, her fingers remembering what her eyes couldn't see. Her father had left when she was 3. Just walked out one morning, never came back. Her mother never talked about him. Raised Beatrice alone, working 16-hour days, 6 days a week, charging just enough to keep the lights on, but never enough to get ahead. "We're not a business," Emma would say, threading her needle by feel in the dim shop. "We're a service. There's a difference." Beatrice went to public school, wore donated clothes, qualified for free lunch. The other kids noticed. Kids always notice. But she kept her head down, got good grades, stayed invisible. She was smart, not just street smart, but actually intelligent. Math came easy. She could see patterns in fabric the way some people see patterns in numbers. She got pregnant at 19. The father, Marcus, promised marriage, promised stability, disappeared the day she told him. She named the baby Nena, raised her in a 1-bedroom apartment above her mother's shop. History repeating itself. But here's what nobody knew. Mini cliffhanger. Beatrice had taught herself engineering principles through sewing. Load-bearing seams, stress distribution, material sciences. She understood tension and compression better than most people with degrees. She'd fixed impossible repairs. Wedding dresses torn beyond recognition, vintage suits with no replacement fabric, leather jackets everyone else said were trash. She could have been an engineer, could have gone to college on scholarship. But Nena came. Money got tight, her mother got sick, and survival doesn't leave room for dreams. Now, at 43, she was exactly where her mother had been. Same shop, same struggle, same impossible choice between dignity and rent. The electricity bill was $215, due Friday. Rent was $950, due in 4 days. She had $283.47 in her checking account. The math was simple and devastating. She was $881.53 short with no way to make it up. When the stranger knocked on her door at 8:58 p.m. on that rainy Tuesday night, she almost didn't answer. A woman alone, bad neighborhood, late hour, every instinct said lock the door and ignore it. But she saw his face through the glass. Terror, not anger, not entitlement. Pure fear, and something in her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Fear makes people cruel or kind. Choose kind. She opened the door. 4 hours later, after repairing his $1,000 suit by candlelight during a power outage, after refusing his desperate offer of $2,500 after he left in tears at 1:16 a.m. Beatrice went to bed believing she'd done the right thing. She had no idea she'd just saved the man who'd stolen everything from her family. The next morning started normal. Alarm at 7:00 a.m. 4.5 hours of sleep. Body aching. Fingers stiff from last night's work. Beatrice made scrambled eggs for Nana, gave her daughter the bigger portion like always, sent her to school with a forced smile. She went downstairs at 8:30, flipped the shop sign to open, made coffee in her temperamental pot, sat down at her mother's 1984 Singer sewing machine. 9:45 a.m. A black SUV drove past, slowly, then circled back, parked across the street. 2 people inside, just watching. Samuel, her elderly customer getting a button replaced, looked up from his crossword. That's strange. Very strange, Beatrice agreed. But Houston was a big city. Weird things happened. 10:15 a.m. Different black car. A woman in a sharp suit got out, walked to Beatrice's window, stared inside like she was appraising property, pulled out her phone, made a call while looking straight at Beatrice. Mr. Samuel stood. Beatrice, I don't like this. 10:42 a.m. 3 black vehicles pulled up simultaneously. 8 people in dark suits stepped out, moved toward her shop in formation. Professional, coordinated, terrifying. Lock the door, Mr. Samuel said, already pulling out his phone to call 911. But the lead man was already at the door, already opening it. Miss Beatrice Anderson? Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Who are you? He pulled out credentials. Richard Sterling, Senior Legal Counsel for Ashford Industries. We need to speak with you immediately regarding last night. I just fixed a suit. Her hands were shaking. I didn't do anything wrong. His face was unreadable. We know. That's exactly why we're here. What happened next will shock you. A woman stepped forward. Tailored suit, confident voice. Miss Anderson, I'm Melanie Brooks, VP of Communications. What we need to discuss is sensitive. We need privacy. Privacy for what? Beatrice backed against her sewing table. Am I being sued? No. Richard's voice was ice. But we need to talk about Gregory Ashford and what you did for him last night. Gregory. The desperate man. The torn suit. The $2,500 she'd refused. What had she done wrong? I helped someone, Beatrice said. That's not illegal. It's not. Melanie's voice softened slightly. But it is unusual, especially when that someone is Gregory Ashford. Another lawyer opened a briefcase, pulled out a tablet. Miss Anderson, do you follow business news? I barely have time to sleep. Beatrice's patience was fraying. No. He turned the tablet toward her. Forbes magazine cover. The man from last night, Gregory, stared back at her. The headline made her stomach drop. Gregory Ashford, the reluctant billionaire reshaping American manufacturing. Below it, $4.2 billion net worth. The room tilted. Beatrice grabbed the table. That's him? Her voice was faint. That's Gregory? Gregory Ashford, Richard confirmed. CEO and founder of Ashford Industries. Mr. Samuel helped her into a chair. She couldn't breathe. $4.2 billion. She'd refused $2,500 from a man worth $4.2 billion. Melanie showed another image. Gregory at the White House. Another at the UN. Another receiving a humanitarian award. No, Beatrice whispered. He was just a scared father with a torn suit. He was both, Melanie said. Richard pulled out more documents. Ashford Industries, 47 manufacturing facilities, 12,000 employees, $3.8 billion in annual revenue. This is when everything changed. Thomas Bennett, the third lawyer, added details Beatrice couldn't process. Medical equipment, automotive parts, aerospace components, numbers that made her poverty feel microscopic. "The meeting this morning," Beatrice managed. "He said 300 people would lose their jobs." "The Holston merger," Thomas confirmed. $800 million. 3 facilities on the line. He wasn't exaggerating. Richard showed her a news article time-stamped 10:00 a.m. this morning. Ashford Industries Board approves historic merger. 300 jobs saved. "He did it," Beatrice's voice broke. "He saved them." "Because of you," Melanie said firmly. "I just fixed a suit." "No." Richard leaned forward. "You did something much more important." He showed her an email from Gregory Ashford to his executive leadership team, sent 3:17 a.m. Subject line: "What I learned last night." Beatrice read it with shaking hands. "Last night I met someone who reminded me what leadership actually means. A woman who had every reason to say no, said yes, who had every reason to take money, refused it, who chose dignity over survival. I've spent 25 years building this company. Tonight, a seamstress taught me more about character than I learned in all those years. Tomorrow I walk into that boardroom remembering, it's not about the bottom line, it's about the people." Tears blurred Beatrice's vision. "He wrote this. About me?" "He sent it to 200 executives at 3 a.m., Melanie said. "Before the board meeting, he told them your story." But there was one thing she didn't know. Thomas pulled up board meeting minutes. Direct quote from the chairman. "Mr. Ashford's composure and clarity were remarkable. When challenged on the merger's risks, he spoke about leadership, character, and responsibility in ways I've never heard from him." Another board member's note. "Something changed in Gregory. He seemed human." "Why are you telling me this?" Beatrice asked. "Because," Richard said, spreading papers across her work table, "Gregory Ashford is on his way here right now. He'll arrive in 10 minutes, and Ms. Anderson—" He opened another briefcase full of documents, architectural plans, legal contracts, financial projections. "He has a proposal for you." Beatrice stared at papers covered in her own name. Director positions, equity partnerships, numbers she couldn't comprehend. "What kind of proposal?" "One that will change your life," Melanie said softly, "if you'll let it." Outside, the most expensive car yet pulled up. Security stepped out first. Then Gregory Ashford, the billionaire she'd treated like any other desperate person who needed help. He walked toward her door. That was his biggest mistake. Not his. Hers. The biggest mistake of Beatrice Anderson's life was trusting what came next. Because 4 months later, when she was living in a renovated shop, earning $120,000 a year, watching her daughter accept a full scholarship to Howard University when she thought the fairy tale was real, that's when she found the box in her mother's closet. The box her mother had labeled, "Samuel, do not open." Inside were patent documents dated 1998, engineering schematics, a leather journal filled with designs, and a name she recognized from her childhood, spoken in whispers when her mother thought she was asleep. Samuel Anderson. Her uncle. Her mother's younger brother. The uncle who'd worked at Ashford Industries' first factory. The mechanical engineer who'd invented the precision manufacturing process that made Gregory Ashford's fortune possible. The uncle who'd been forced out in 1999, patents stolen, died in poverty in 2015. The uncle whose work had made Gregory Ashford worth $4.2 billion, while his sister, Beatrice's mother, died with $100 in a coffee can and a shut-off notice from the electric company. What she found next would destroy everything. Beatrice sat on her mother's bedroom floor. Her mother had been dead 5 years now, surrounded by documents that rewrote her entire life. The journal was leather-bound, worn from use. Samuel Anderson's handwriting covered page after page. Mechanical drawings, calculations, notes dated from 1996 to 1998. November 1996. Prototype successful. Precision within 0.001 mm tolerance. Could revolutionize automotive parts manufacturing. March 1997. Showed designs to Robert Ashford, plant supervisor. He seemed impressed, said he'd take it to ownership. June 1997. Robert promoted to VP Manufacturing. My designs now company property. Contract says anything created within scope of employment belongs to Ashford Industries. But I designed this at home, on my own time, my own materials. September 1997. Tried to discuss patent with Robert. He said I was stepping above my station. Said I should be grateful to have a job. Said black engineers don't get to make demands. The next entries got darker. December 1997. They're using my process in Factory B. I see my designs everywhere. No credit, no compensation. I asked Robert about royalties. He laughed. February 1998. Robert told me to stop making trouble. Said if I kept pushing, I'd be terminated. I have 2 kids. Wife is pregnant with our 3rd. I need this job. April 1998. Filed formal complaint with HR. They said I signed away all rights in my employment contract. I didn't understand what I was signing. They gave me 48 hours to sign a new NDA or be fired. I signed. What choice did I have? September 1998. Robert Ashford's son, Gregory, just graduated from Wharton. Company announcement. Gregory will revolutionize manufacturing with innovative processes. That's my work. My work. They're giving it to his son. The truth they buried for 26 years. Beatrice's hands shook as she turned pages. Her uncle's desperation bled through the ink. November 1998. Tried to hire a lawyer, can't afford one. Legal aid said employment contracts are hard to fight, especially when you signed an NDA, especially when you're black and the company is white and rich. January 1999. They fired me. Insubordination. Blackballed me from every factory in Houston. Can't get hired anywhere. Emma, my sister, is helping with bills, but she's barely surviving herself. I've destroyed my family over pride. March 1999. Gregory Ashford just founded Ashford Industries, using my manufacturing process as the foundation. The news calls him a genius entrepreneur. Forbes predicts his company will be worth hundreds of millions within a decade. July 1999. I am broken. Cannot provide for my family. My wife left, took the kids. I see my designs making millions for the Ashfords while I can't afford groceries. Emma says let it go. Says fighting rich white men only gets black men killed. But it's not fair. It's not fair. The last entry was dated August 15, 1999. I'm hiding these documents with Emma. If anything happens to me, maybe someday someone will care. Maybe someday there will be justice. But I don't believe it anymore. The system isn't broken. It was built this way, built to protect people like the Ashfords, built to crush people like me. Beatrice's tears fell onto the page, smearing ink written 26 years ago. Beneath the journal were patent applications. Her uncle's name, filed March 1998, rejected. Reason: prior art exists. But there was no prior art. The prior patent was filed by Ashford Industries 2 weeks earlier, based on Samuel's own designs. They'd stolen his invention, then used the patent system to prove he stole it from them. Mini cliffhanger. Beneath the patents were newspaper clippings. Local engineer dies in apparent suicide. October 2015. Samuel Anderson, 58, found in his apartment. No note. No explanation. The article was 3 paragraphs, a life dismissed in 100 words. But paperclipped to it was something else. A letter, dated October 2015, from a lawyer named Patricia Chen. Mr. Anderson, I've reviewed your case. The statute of limitations for fraud claims in Texas is 4 years. Your patents were stolen in 1998. It's now 2015. Legally, you have no case. I'm sorry, but there may be another option. Document everything. Save all evidence. If you have family, make sure they know the truth. Sometimes justice takes generations. Her uncle had saved everything, had documented everything, had waited for justice that never came, and then he'd killed himself. Or had he? Beatrice found one more document at the bottom of the box, a police report from October 2015. Investigating officer's notes. Deceased found by landlord. No signs of struggle, no suicide note. Antidepressants in medicine cabinet, but not at lethal levels. Me ruled death as undetermined. Family declined autopsy. Case closed. Undetermined. Not suicide. Undetermined. Her mother had known, had hidden this box, had labeled it with her brother's name and a warning not to open it. Why? Beatrice looked at her phone, at the contact she'd saved 4 months ago. Gregory Ashford. The man who'd cried in her shop, who'd offered her $2,500, who'd given her a $120,000 job, a $2.1 million investment, a scholarship for Nana. The man whose father had stolen everything from her uncle. The man whose fortune was built on her family's stolen designs. The man who'd been 18 years old when his father gave him Samuel Anderson's life's work and called it a graduation present. Gregory Ashford hadn't known, she told herself. He was just a kid. His father did this. Robert Ashford was the villain. But Robert Ashford had died in 2010. And Gregory had run Ashford Industries for 15 years after that, profiting every day from stolen work, never questioning where the family innovation came from, never wondering if his father had been honest. This is when Beatrice made a choice that would cost everything. She called Patricia Chen, the lawyer from the 2015 letter. 15 minutes of searching found her, still practicing, still taking underdog cases. Ms. Chen, my name is Beatrice Anderson. My uncle was Samuel Anderson. I need to talk to you about Ashford Industries. 2 weeks later, Beatrice sat in Patricia Chen's modest office in downtown Houston. The lawyer was 62, Chinese-American, sharp-eyed, and skeptical. I told your uncle in 2015 that the statute of limitations had passed, Patricia said. Why are you here? Beatrice spread the documents across the desk, the journal, the patents, the timeline. Patricia read for 20 minutes in silence. Then she looked up. How long have you worked for Ashford Industries? 4 months. Director of Employee Services. 30% equity partner in the tailoring division. Jesus Christ. Patricia sat back. You're the tailor. The one from the news. The one who fixed his suit. Yes. And he gave you a job, a partnership, money for your daughter's college. Yes. And now you're telling me he built his empire on designs stolen from your uncle. Yes. Patricia was quiet for a long time. Then, Miss Anderson, if you pursue this, you will lose everything he gave you. The job, the partnership, the scholarship. He'll call you ungrateful. The media will destroy you, and you might still lose in court. I know. Your daughter's scholarship is contractual. He can't take that back. But everything else? Gone. I know. Why would you do this? Beatrice looked at her mother's photo on her phone, at her uncle's face in the 1998 newspaper clipping, at Nana's bright smile. Because he said he learned about character from me, but I learned it from my mother, and she learned it from her brother. And Samuel Anderson died believing there was no justice in this world. She met Patricia's eyes. I need to prove him wrong. Patricia Chen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a lawyer's smile. Then let's burn this empire down. The lawsuit was filed on January 15th, exactly 4 months after Beatrice had fixed Gregory Ashford's suit. Anderson v. Ashford Industries, Inc. Plaintiff, Beatrice Anderson, individually and as heir to Samuel Anderson, deceased. Defendants, Ashford Industries, Inc. Gregory Ashford, individually, claims fraud, unjust enrichment, conversion, breach of fiduciary duty, intentional infliction of emotional distress relief. Sought $40,000 in damages, plus injunctive relief. The number was calculated carefully. 26 years of royalties. Conservative estimate of 2% of Ashford Industries' manufacturing division revenue from 1998 to 2025. The media got hold of it within hours. That was her second mistake. The headlines came fast and brutal. Ungrateful Tailor sues billionaire benefactor. Woman who refused $2,500 now demands $40 million. Gregory Ashford's act of kindness backfires spectacularly. Lawsuit targets man who saved Houston jobs. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Twitter exploded. Off Business Insider. Beatrice Anderson, the Houston tailor who became famous for refusing payment from billionaire Gregory Ashford, has filed a 40-minute lawsuit against him. Full story. Link. 127K retweets, 890K likes top reply, 48K likes. This is why no good deed goes unpunished. He gave her a job, a partnership, paid for her daughter's college, and this is how she repays him? Disgusting. And Fox Business. Breaking. The grateful tailor, who inspired viral story about kindness and character, is now suing the man who changed her life. What happened to gratitude? 89K retweets at her TMZ. Gregory Ashford gave a broke seamstress $2.1 million to expand her business. She's suing him for $40 million. We got the exclusive details. Link. 156K retweets. The comments were worse. She saw a white billionaire and dollar signs. Race Hustler Playbook page 1. This is why you can't help these people. Give them an inch, they take $40 million. I knew something was off about her refusing the $2,500. It was all a setup. She played him. Her poor daughter. Imagine having a mother this shameless. Gregory Ashford's PR team worked fast. Within 24 hours, he was on Good Morning America. The host, sympathetic and warm. Gregory, this must be devastating. You tried to help someone, and now you're being sued. How are you feeling? Gregory, looking tired and hurt. Honestly, Robin, I'm heartbroken. I thought we'd built something meaningful. A partnership based on mutual respect. I invested millions in her community. I paid for her daughter's education, which, let me be clear, I won't take back. Nana deserves that scholarship no matter what her mother does. That's very generous of you. It's not about generosity. It's about doing what's right. He paused, and his voice cracked perfectly. I learned something from Beatrice that night. About character. About integrity. I thought we understood each other. I thought she believed in second chances, in building something together instead of tearing each other down. What do you think changed? I don't know. Maybe someone got in her ear. Maybe lawyers convinced her there was money to be made. But the Beatrice I met, who worked for 4 hours in the dark, who refused payment because I was desperate, I don't think she would do this. The host leaned in. The lawsuit alleges that your company stole designs from her uncle in 1998. What's your response to that? Gregory's face showed perfect sadness. My father, Robert Ashford, built this company from the ground up. He passed away in 2010, so he can't defend himself against these accusations. But I knew my father. He was a man of integrity. Did he make mistakes? Probably, we all do. But deliberately stealing from an employee? That's not the man who raised me. So you deny the allegations? I deny that my father was a thief. I deny that our company was built on stolen work. And I'm deeply saddened that someone I tried to help would make these accusations without any proof beyond some old notebooks that could say anything. What happened next will shock you. The public ate it up. Gregory Ashford, billionaire who saved jobs, who'd been inspired by a poor tailor's kindness, who'd invested millions to help her community, was the victim. Beatrice Anderson, ungrateful, greedy, playing the race card, was the villain. Protesters appeared outside Anderson alterations. Not many, but enough. Signs read, "Gratitude, not greed." Ashford changed your life. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. Someone spray-painted her shop window. Race hustler. Nana came home from school crying. Mom, everyone's saying terrible things. They're saying you're a liar. They're saying we're thieves. Why are you doing this? Beatrice held her daughter. Baby, sometimes doing the right thing makes people hate you. But is it the right thing? Mr. Ashford gave us everything. He gave you everything. He gave us what he could afford to lose, Nana. What he couldn't afford was the truth. But Nana pulled away. I don't understand. We were finally okay, finally stable, and you're destroying it. Beatrice watched her daughter walk to her room and close the door. Watched the thing she'd feared most happening. Her child losing faith in her. She called Patricia Chen. They're destroying me. The media, the public. My own daughter doesn't understand. Patricia's voice was steel. Did you think this would be easy? You're a black woman accusing a white billionaire of building his empire on stolen black labor. Of course they're destroying you. That's the playbook. Discredit the accuser. Make it about gratitude instead of justice. What if we can't prove it? Then we lose. But Beatrice, we're not going to lose. How can you be sure? Because rich men always leave evidence. They think they're untouchable, so they get sloppy. And Gregory Ashford? He's not half as smart as he thinks he is. Mini cliffhanger. Discovery began in February. Patricia Chen filed subpoenas for every document Ashford Industries had from 1996 to 2000. Employment records, patent applications, internal memos, financial statements. Ashford's lawyers, a team of 12 from Winston and Strawn, billing $200 an hour, fought every request, filed motions to dismiss, claimed attorney-client privilege, argued that 26-year-old documents were destroyed per company retention policies. But Patricia had help. 3 associates from her firm, working pro bono. A paralegal named Marcus, who'd grown up in 3rd Ward, who remembered Beatrice's mother's shop, who worked 16-hour days because this is personal, and they had allies Beatrice didn't expect. The first email came in March. Subject line: I worked with Samuel Anderson. Ms. Anderson, my name is James Walsh. I'm 68 years old now, retired. But in 1998, I was a senior engineer at Ashford Industries Factory A. I knew your uncle. He was brilliant. What they did to him was criminal. I watched it happen and said nothing because I was a coward. I can't undo that. But I kept records. I have meeting notes from 1998, where Robert Ashford explicitly discussed optimizing Samuel's designs for commercial application. Sorry. I have emails proving they knew the patents were based on Samuel's work. If you're fighting them, I'll testify. The second email came 2 days later, from a woman named Dorothy Martinez. I was Robert Ashford's executive assistant from 1996-2002. I typed the memos where he instructed legal to neutralize the Anderson situation. I have copies. They fired me in 2002 when I threatened to go public, paid me $50,000 to sign an NDA, but NDAs can't protect crime. I'll testify. The third contact came by phone. A man named Gerald Thompson, 71, former VP of Engineering. I quit Ashford Industries in 2001 because I couldn't stomach what they did to your uncle. Robert Ashford was a monster, and Gregory? He knew. Maybe not all the details, but he knew the company was built on something questionable. He just didn't care to ask questions. By April, Patricia had 8 witnesses. People who'd worked at Ashford Industries during the critical years. People who'd stayed silent for decades out of fear, out of NDAs, out of shame. They were ready to talk now. The evidence emerged like a slow-motion avalanche. Document 1. Internal memo, dated March 1998, from Robert Ashford to Legal Department. Samuel Anderson situation. Employee is claiming ownership of precision manufacturing process currently in development for Factory B. His employment contract assigns all work product to company, But he's disputing the language. Legal. Prepare termination documents and NDA. We need this resolved before Gregory takes over operations. Cannot have employee claims complicating the transition. Patricia presented it at deposition. Gregory Ashford's lead attorney, Michael Barrett, barely glanced at it. This proves nothing. Employment contracts routinely assign work product to employers. That's standard practice. Even when the work was done outside of work hours, with personal materials, on personal time. The contract language says, within scope of employment. Mr. Anderson's designs related to his employment, therefore company property. Interesting. Patricia pulled out Document 2. Email chain, March-April 1998, between Robert Ashford and patent attorney David Klein. Robert, we need to file immediately on the precision process. Anderson is making noise about prior invention. David, if Anderson has prior documentation, we could face challenges. Robert, Anderson is a black factory worker with no resources and 3 kids. We're a $1 million company with the best lawyers in Houston. File the patent. Let him try to fight it. Michael Barrett's face tightened. This is taken out of context. What context makes "let him try to fight it" sound less like deliberate theft? My client's father is dead. He can't defend these characterizations. How convenient. But there was one thing they didn't know. Document 3 was the nuclear option. Patricia had saved it, had verified it with 3 independent forensic analysts, had confirmed its authenticity beyond any doubt. It was a letter. Dated September 1999, from Robert Ashford to Gregory Ashford, handwritten, on Ashford Industries letterhead. Son, you've asked about the foundation of our manufacturing process. The truth is complicated. In 1997, we had an employee, Samuel Anderson, who developed breakthrough designs. Brilliant work. But he was a factory engineer, not management material. Company policy gave us rights to his innovations, but he disputed this. We handled it. He's no longer with the company. His designs are now proprietary Ashford IP. You don't need to worry about the details. Just know that sometimes, in business, you have to be willing to make hard choices. The process is legal. Use it well. Build the empire I started. Dad. Patricia laid it on the conference table during Gregory's deposition in June. Do you recognize this letter? Gregory's face went white. Where did you get that? From your father's files. Do you recognize it? His lawyer put a hand on his arm. Don't answer. But Gregory was staring at his father's handwriting, at proof that he'd known, that he'd been told the foundation of his empire was built on theft, and he'd done nothing. Mr. Ashford, Patricia's voice was gentle now, deadly gentle. You told Good Morning America that your father was a man of integrity, that he would never steal from an employee. But this letter, in his own hand, admits exactly that. So which is it? Was your father a liar when he wrote this letter, or were you lying on national television? Gregory's lawyer stood. This deposition is over. Sit down, counselor. We have 6 hours scheduled and we're using every minute. She turned back to Gregory. The letter is dated September 1999. You would have been 23 years old, fresh out of Wharton, about to take over the family business. Your father told you the truth about where your competitive advantage came from. And what did you do? Gregory's voice was barely audible. I built the company. Using stolen designs. They were legally company property. Legally stolen, you mean? The contracts were designed to trap employees who didn't have resources to fight back. Your father said it himself. A black factory worker with no resources. He knew exactly what he was doing. And so did you. The truth was about to destroy everything. Patricia pulled out more documents, a cascade of evidence, each piece building on the last, Banking records showing Samuel Anderson's final paychecks terminated October 1998, 2 weeks after filing his internal complaint. Patent office records showing Ashford Industries filed 167 patents between 1998-2000. 12 were directly based on Samuel's designs. Current estimated value, $2.3 billion in revenue generated over 26 years. Employment records showing Samuel Anderson was blackballed. Internal emails between Robert Ashford and other Houston manufacturing companies. Anderson is a troublemaker, claims we stole his work, do not hire. Financial records showing Gregory Ashford's personal wealth grew from $40 million in 2000 to $4.2 billion in 2025, growth directly tied to the manufacturing processes Samuel invented. Testimony from James Walsh. I was in the meeting when Robert said, "We'll just file the patents first. By the time Anderson realizes what happened, statute of limitations will protect us." They planned it. This wasn't an accident. Testimony from Dorothy Martinez. Robert called Samuel an uppity black engineer who didn't know his place. He said if Samuel pushed back, they'd destroy him. And they did. Testimony from Gerald Thompson. Gregory was 23 when he took over. I tried to talk to him about the Samuel Anderson situation. I said, "We need to make this right." He said, "My father handled it. The past is past. Let's focus on building the future." He didn't care. He knew it was wrong and he didn't care. Patricia laid it all out like a prosecutor building a murder case. Each document, each witness, each piece of evidence pointing to the same conclusion. Robert Ashford had deliberately stolen Samuel Anderson's life's work, had used legal contracts and power imbalances to trap him, had filed patents based on stolen designs, had blackballed Samuel when he complained, had built Ashford Industries on theft, and Gregory Ashford had known since 1999 and done nothing. The court hearing was set for August 15, 2026, exactly 27 years after Robert Ashford's letter to his son. Judge Maria Rodriguez presided. 62 years old, Latina, appointed by Obama, reputation for not tolerating corporate bullshit. The courtroom was packed. Media in the back rows. Protesters outside. Cameras everywhere. Gregory Ashford sat at the defense table, flanked by his 12 lawyers. He looked older now. Tired. The shine of billionaire philanthropy had tarnished over 6 months of depositions and document discovery. Beatrice sat at the plaintiff's table with Patricia Chen. She'd lost 20 pounds during the lawsuit, lost clients at her shop, lost friends who thought she was being ungrateful, nearly lost her daughter's respect. But she was still here. Judge Rodriguez spoke first. "I've reviewed the evidence presented during discovery. Mr. Barrett, your motion to dismiss is denied. This case is going to trial unless the parties reach settlement. But before we schedule trial dates, I have questions." She looked at Gregory. "Mr. Ashford, you've built a reputation as a philanthropist, a man of character, someone who learned about integrity from a struggling tailor who refused your money. Is that accurate?" "Yes, Your Honor." And yet, the evidence suggests your company, your family's company, was built on designs stolen from an employee who couldn't afford to fight back. How do you reconcile those two things?" Gregory's lawyer started to object, but Gregory held up a hand. "Your Honor, my father handled those matters before I took over. I was young. I didn't understand the full implications." "You were 23, Mr. Ashford. A Wharton graduate. You understood business. You understood intellectual property. Your father sent you a letter explaining exactly where your competitive advantage came from. What did you do with that information?" Silence. "Mr. Ashford, I'm asking you a direct question." Gregory's voice cracked. "I built the company. I used the processes. I generated revenue. I created jobs." Using stolen intellectual property. The contracts were legal documents designed to trap vulnerable employees. Legal doesn't mean ethical, Mr. Ashford. You know that. Judge Rodriguez turned to the evidence files. Samuel Anderson earned $42,000 a year when he invented processes that generated billions for your company. He died in poverty. His sister, the plaintiff's mother, ran a failing tailor shop while you built a fortune on her brother's work, and when the plaintiff tried to help you, out of kindness, you gave her a job and a partnership and acted like you were the generous one. She looked at Beatrice. Ms. Anderson, you could have kept quiet. You had a good job. Financial security for your daughter. Why risk it? Beatrice stood. Her voice was steady. Because my uncle died believing there was no justice. Because my mother spent 40 years struggling while the people who stole from her brother got rich. Because my daughter deserves to know that doing the right thing matters, even when it costs you everything. The courtroom was silent. Judge Rodriguez nodded. Mr. Barrett, I'm going to ask your client one more time. Do you want to settle this case, or do you want me to schedule a trial where all of this evidence becomes public record? Mini cliffhanger. Gregory Ashford looked at his lawyers, at the documents spread across Patricia Chen's table, at Beatrice's face, the woman who'd fixed his suit, who'd refused his money, who'd believed in his bullshit about character and integrity. He looked at the letter from his father, at the proof that he'd known for 27 years. We'll settle, he said quietly. The settlement was finalized in September 2026. Terms: $40 million payment to Beatrice Anderson, individually and as representative of Samuel Anderson's estate. Public acknowledgement from Gregory Ashford and Ashford Industries. We acknowledge that Samuel Anderson, a black engineer employed by our company from 1996-1998, made substantial and innovative contributions to manufacturing processes that became foundational to Ashford Industries' success. We acknowledge that Mr. Anderson was not adequately compensated for his contributions, and that company practices at the time failed to recognize his intellectual property rights. We deeply regret the harm caused to Mr. Anderson and his family. Establishment of the Samuel Anderson Innovation Fund, $50 million endowment to support black and minority engineers pursuing manufacturing innovation. Administered by Howard University. Patent attribution. All patents derived from Samuel Anderson's work would be retroactively credited to him as co-inventor. Restructuring of Beatrice's partnership. 50% equity stake in Ashford Employee Services, up from 30%, with independent board oversight to prevent conflicts. Policy changes. Ashford Industries implemented new IP attribution policies, including independent review of employee contracts, fair compensation for employee innovations, and a whistleblower protection program. But the settlement wasn't the victory. The victory was what came after. The media coverage shifted. Slowly at first, then like a dam breaking. New York Times, the $40 million suit, how one woman exposed corporate theft of black innovation. Washington Post, Gregory Ashford's charitable image concealed decades of exploitation. Bloomberg. When billionaire philanthropy meets historical injustice, the Ashford settlement. The public narrative changed. Comments that had called Beatrice ungrateful now asked different questions. How many other black engineers had their work stolen? How many self-made billionaires actually built empires on stolen black labor? Why did it take a lawsuit for Ashford to acknowledge what he'd known for 27 years? 3 other former Ashford Industries employees came forward with similar claims. The company settled those too. Quietly. Industry publications ran investigative pieces on IP theft from minority employees. Congress held hearings on employment contract reform. Law schools added case studies on the Anderson versus Ashford settlement. Nana, who'd been angry and confused during the lawsuit, wrote an essay for her college application titled, "What My Mother Taught Me About Justice." She got into Howard's engineering program with full scholarship from the Samuel Anderson Innovation Fund. The fund's first year supported 47 Black engineering students. By year 3, 200. By year 5, the endowment had grown to $120 million through additional donations. Samuel Anderson's name, forgotten for 27 years, now appeared on university buildings, scholarship programs, engineering awards. And Beatrice? She kept running Anderson alterations, kept hiring local seamstresses, kept offering free alterations to job seekers every Saturday. But now she did it without worrying about electricity bills or rent. She used $10 million of the settlement to establish an IP legal defense fund for employees fighting patent theft. Free lawyers for people like her uncle, who couldn't afford to fight. She donated $5 million to Third Ward community programs, after-school STEM education, small business grants, housing assistance. She invested $15 million in a trust for Nana and future grandchildren. She kept $10 million for herself. Bought a modest house in the same neighborhood. Nothing fancy. She didn't need fancy. The remaining settlement funds went to causes her mother and uncle would have supported. Scholarships, legal aid, community development. And Gregory Ashford? His reputation never recovered. He resigned as CEO of Ashford Industries in November 2026. The board appointed independent leadership. His net worth dropped from $4.2 billion to $2.8 billion as the company restructured and paid out additional settlements. He gave interviews about learning from mistakes and the complicated legacy of family businesses. Nobody bought it. His TED Talk about the night a tailor taught me about character was deleted from the internet. His Good Morning America interview, where he'd called Beatrice ungrateful, became a case study in how powerful men weaponize victimhood. He still had billions. He still had mansions and private jets and access to power. But everyone knew the truth now. His empire was built on stolen Black innovation. And the only reason anyone found out was because a broke tailor refused $2,500 and chose dignity over survival. So let me ask you something. Have you ever worked for someone who took credit for your ideas? Have you ever signed a contract you didn't fully understand because you needed the job? Have you ever stayed quiet about injustice because speaking up felt too risky? Have you ever wondered how many self-made billionaires are really just people who were smart enough, rich enough, and white enough to steal without consequences? Beatrice Anderson did what most people can't do. She had everything to lose and fought anyway. She risked her daughter's future to honor her uncle's memory. She chose justice over gratitude. But she shouldn't have had to. Samuel Anderson shouldn't have died in poverty while his designs made billions for someone else. Emma Anderson shouldn't have worked herself to death in a failing tailor shop while the Ashfords built mansions. The system that protected Robert Ashford in 1998 is still protecting people like him today. Employment contracts are still designed to trap vulnerable workers. IP law still favors companies over individuals. Black and brown innovators still fight for recognition while white executives take credit. Beatrice won one case. But the war is far from over. If this story made you angry, good. Use that anger. Check your employment contracts. Document your innovations. Support legal aid organizations that help workers fight back. Vote for politicians who reform IP law. Share stories like this until the truth can't be buried anymore. Drop your story in the comments. Have you or someone you know been exploited by employers who took credit for your work? Have you stayed quiet about injustice because fighting felt impossible? Share this story. Not the sanitized version where Gregory Ashford is a generous philanthropist who got sued by an ungrateful woman. The real version. The version where a Black engineer's life work was stolen, and it took 27 years for anyone to care. Because here's what Beatrice Anderson proved. You can choose kindness without choosing submission. You can refuse money without refusing justice. You can honor your family's legacy by fighting the people who destroyed them. The Ashfords of the world count on your silence. They count on your gratitude. They count on you being too tired, too poor, too scared to fight back. Prove them wrong. Subscribe to channel for more stories about the people who refuse to stay silent. Stories about the lawsuits that expose decades of injustice. Stories about the truth they tried to bury. Stay just. Stay loud. Stay free.